So today we're going to be talking about buttons. Let's say you've had a pair of pants that you love and you've worn them for years, but finally a button pops off. Or maybe you find a pair of pants at the thrift and the button's just not staying on well. That's an easy fix. So I'm going to show you how I get my buttons to stay.
I love these pants, but unfortunately the button has fallen off from the inside. So there's nothing to hold that little buttonhole in place. In order to fix this, I'm gonna have to find the right size button. So I grabbed a couple options and just checked to see if they would fit. So the first one was a little too big. It's not gonna slide in at all, so can't use that one. But the second one is a little smaller and it slides through perfectly. And when I put the holes of the button right next to the beginning of the buttonhole, there's about 1/8 of an inch left of the buttonhole showing. So I grabbed a colored pencil, but you can also use chalk or really anything that will wash out. Don't use pen because that will stay on your clothes. I put the pencil through the buttonhole and just marked on the other side where I want to place my button, making sure it's at the beginning of the buttonhole, not the center. So I just made sure that I could really see where I'd marked so that I placed the button in the perfect position, because that is very important. Another important step to this is thread choice. So I have this brown thread here, which is your classic home sewing thread. But I have a larger spool of thread that I actually use to sew leather that's quite a bit thicker. So let's just quickly test how thick these threads are to show you the difference. So I'm cutting out 2 pieces, and you'll see that the first piece I'm going to grab, and it is quite easy to pull apart. It doesn't require much effort at all. Now I take my second piece, and it definitely is a little bit more straining. I can still rip it, but it hurts my hands quite a bit more. Now we are going to thread our needle and make sure that you have a knot that's not too big, but still will have no chance of sliding through your fabric. If you're using thin thread, just make sure your knot is extra thick. So I'm going to just start by pushing the thread right through where we first made our mark. We need to make sure that it doesn't go through to the other side of the fabric because we want this to be invisible to the outside, just for what we're doing here. And then we are going to push it through the first hole of the button, and then slide through the second hole and push the thread back through underneath. We don't want to pull it too tight because we need the button to still be able to slide through, and I'll show you how to make that perfect later on. So you just want to keep going through the first hole, then the second hole, the first hole, then the second hole. Once again, don't pull it too tight. We can take our time with this. It is really important that you don't get any knots or anything like that because we need this button to be on there nice and firm. So once again, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So now we're going to make sure that the button is actually going to slide through the buttonhole. So I'm going to go around it in a circular motion about 10 times or so. This is making what's called the shank, which just makes sure that the button kind of sticks out more. We really don't want the button to be tight against the fabric. And then once that's done, we're going to knot it off by sticking our needle through the shank and pushing it through our existing loop of thread. We're going to do this a couple times, which will make a nice and tight knot. Finally, we're going to finish it off by pushing our needle through one layer of fabric, just out maybe like a centimeter or so. And then we can snip really close to the fabric. And once we do that, we're going to have a nice clean finish. We're not going to have any threads showing because that thread is going to be sandwiched between the 2 layers of fabric, and it really won't slide out from that. So finally, we're going to make sure this actually fits. So my button will go through the buttonhole perfectly. We love it. And then I'm just going to do up the hooks, and look, it lays nice and flat. There's no bunching or anything, and it will fit my body perfectly.